Welcome to Season 4 of the Agile brand with Greg Kihlstrom, where we discuss business agility through customer experience, employee experience, and digital transformation. I'm your host, Greg Kihlstrom. The Agile World podcast is brought to you by TEKsystems, an industry leader in full-stack technology services, talent services, and real-world application. For more information, go to teksystems.com. To read more about the topics discussed on this show, you can go to my website at gregkihlstrom.com and read my latest articles or get a copy of my latest book, Meaningful Measurement of the Customer Experience, now available on Amazon and other retailers. My name is Greg Kihlstrom, and I'm the host of the Agile Brand podcast. Today we're going to talk about unifying sales teams and bringing people, processes, and platforms together to achieve a common goal. To help me discuss this topic, I'd like to welcome Susan Rothwell, CRO at Vericast. Susan, welcome to the show.
Hi, Greg. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Yeah, looking forward to talking with you about this. So why don't we start by you giving a little background on yourself, as well as your role at Vericast.
Sure. So how about if I first talk a little bit about Vericast, and then I'll talk about the role because everybody doesn't know who we are and what we do. But, Vericast has been around for a long time. As different companies, we've united under one brand called Vericast. So that's kind of what we'll be talking about today. But we're a leading marketing solutions company. And what we do is we help a lot of different types of companies, find their customers with our print and digital solutions. And we usually use a lot of analytics and data. So we engage with grocers, we engage with consumer packaged goods, retail, restaurants, the financial institutions, and we really help them kind of understand like the consumer behavior and basically use our data and analytics to help connect them, and then our different products to help actually activate them. So, it's been pretty active, over the past 2 years since consumer behavior has changed dramatically, and so, it's been an interesting journey for sure in being able to use our analytics and data and portfolio products to help our customers. So me personally, I've been with the company for 15 years, been in sales my entire career, started as a director, and now lead the entire Vericast organization, which originally consisted of different companies, which was at NCH, which is a coupon clearinghouse and data company, Harlan Clark, which is financial institution and checking solutions, and Molasses, which is a marketing services and digital media company as well. And they're all now under the one brand, which is called Vericast.
Well, so last year, as you mentioned, you helped lead the company through a reorganization that aligned these businesses under a brand. And with this reorganization came the need to take all the siloed sales teams and unite them as well. So let's dive into that a little bit more. Why did you make this decision with the teams at Vericast, and what was the impact to those formerly siloed sales teams?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting, to go through what I like to call as an evolution or transformation, right? I mean, we felt that as an organization, having one brand was really going to help us, leverage our customer relationships as well as all of the different solutions that sat in the different siloed parts of the organization. So, the first step was making sure that, the team, not just my sales organization, but also the company kind of understood what that mission was, why we were doing it, and what the benefits to it were, right, to the company and to the organization. And that's a really heavy lift when you try to do that, right, because people are so used to their worlds. But I think when you then kind of put that strategy and focus out there, I think the key to success whenever you're doing any type of realignment or any type of reorganization is really, to me, two things, right? First of all, really making sure you have not just the strategy, but the data and the analytics and kind of, the trends and things to really understand, based in data, why you're doing something. And number two, make sure you're engaging people to be a part of the journey and helping lead through the journey, right? And because that's so important, because that allows people to create ownership. It also, gives you from a leadership perspective an opportunity to really hear a lot of great thoughts and ideas, and I think give you a much better perspective on how you need to align, how you need to lead through it, and understanding, your teams have a lot of great ideas and experience that just make that transition a lot easier.
Can you give an example of how you use data and business intelligence in in enabling what you were just kind of describing?
Yeah, I've actually just went through an exercise last week. It's a practice that continues to evolve. One of the things that I let my teams know is that we will constantly be evolving as a sales organization. Businesses change. The way people engage businesses change. People at your accounts change. So you need to be constantly making sure you understand where the industry or the business is and how we should be aligning to that. So, evolution in how we're organized, as long as I'm leading the team, will always be a best practice. It's something that we look at all the time, and not something that people should be afraid of, but should lean into. So we were looking at one of the teams last week, and we were using different pieces of data to lead the conversation, and those pieces included internal data. So we were looking at sales performance, right? How much revenue was a seller doing? How many sales calls? What were their sales activities in accounts? At what level were they reaching? Were they in the C-suite in the accounts, right? Like, what was the hierarchy of there? So we look kind of, what was the customer buying from us? What different product lines? Have their revenue increased or decreased? So we're kind of looking at that internal piece of it. Then what we did was we appended some, information about the client. Were they experiencing changes in their business? Were they opening locations? Were they adding new products or services or things like that? Was there changes in leadership? What was some of their strategies they were focused on? And then the final thing was, perhaps, is there something going on, in the industry, right, that could be driving, changes into that business? And we accumulate all this data, and then what we do is we weigh it, right? We give weights to the data, and what ends up happening is, out of this exercise, which was a newer, a little bit of a different experience for us in how we use the data, we ended up looking at our top 200 accounts in one of the segments and realized that we had what we were called hidden gems, right? They were accounts that we weren't really focused on as a key growth account, but when we looked at all that data and the way we weighed it, it was popping to the top, right? And so it ended up, creating a strategy to say, here we have, 20 of these accounts that really look like they're potentially in growth mode, and we're not really aligned, from a sales and service perspective to treat them that way and engage them that way. So that's just an example of, just last week, how, we used business intelligence and data to look at our business and perhaps make some different decisions about how we're engaging our customers.
Yeah, that's wonderful, and that's a great example of how to use that to make some positive change in the organization. What about from the customer perspective? I mean, I could draw some assumptions from that as well that would be positives, but how do you think your customers benefit from this approach to data and business intelligence, and really just aligning sales teams?
Yeah, so I think as a couple things from the data and intelligence that we provide as an organization to our clients. It's been really critical over really through the pandemic in the past 2 years, more so than ever, right? The customer journey has changed. I'll take an example from a restaurant, right? They're one of a key vertical that we engage with, and they don't know on a given day, Greg, right? How are you going to engage one of your favorite restaurants, right? Are you going to go in and have lunch? Or are you going to, call in and pick up your order, or are you going to have it delivered, right? So on any given day, their engagement with you as a customer potentially can change, and so that can be very challenging, for them to understand how do they actually engage a customer like you, right? Who's changing their minds. So we use some of our intelligence and our data from from that perspective to help our customers, right? And tell them how they should be engaging, how you would respond, what's the best way to engage a customer that would be switching channels, for example, like you would. So that's one example. Another example is that we ask our customers, right? The very first time we started to talk about even really becoming one organization and combining and integrating the company, it came from one of our largest customers who was telling us that there were too many engagement points from a sales perspective. We had too many people calling on them at different areas, and there wasn't just one point of contact, and it didn't allow them to have opportunities to have a master service agreement and engage us in a much more fluid way. And that was really kind of the spark, one of the sparks that said, hey, we need to be easier to work with, and we need to be able to offer our customers more. So I think that was a real positive. I think one of the things that our customers are trying to understand is, we were these four siloed organizations, and now we're one company. And what is Vericast, right? And in the rebranding and in the evolution of the company, really bringing forward not so much just our products, which were a display ad or a mail insert or a direct mail or a check program or something like that, but really engaging us at that much higher level of data and intelligence and using our technology and our platforms. So I think that's where we have some work to do, just to really change that perspective and leverage that and really help our customers more along those lines instead of just a product focused organization.
And so let's talk a little bit about the internal part of that, a little bit more. I mentioned we were going to talk about the people, process, and platforms, and how those things work together. So combining siloed teams makes a lot of sense to do, though sometimes in practice there's some team members that might be resistant to change, perhaps, or even if they understand the basic reasons why some of these things need to happen. So, in your work and your alignment, how did you go about ensuring that the people part of the change happened successfully? And maybe what would some advice be that you'd give to other leaders that are about to embark on similar initiatives?
Yeah, I think, as I said, I think change is really just has to become part of your culture, right? And I'm really trying to drive that type of engagement with the sales team and the cross-functional teams as well. I think it comes with a couple of things. You really need to have alignment across the organization. Whenever there's change, it's not usually just within one segment, say sales. It'll affect client services, or it could affect marketing and things like that. So whenever you're looking at like a change in a go-to-market strategy, you need to make sure there's alignment across the entire organization. And again, like I said in the beginning, that everybody kind of understands, the short-term strategy and then where we're trying to evolve to, right? Because normally, reason why you change is to stay current, but also to evolve into something else, which is more aligned to what customers want. So having some real clear understanding and really communicating, that's key. The biggest key, though, is really having involvement of many levels of the organization, people in the room while the decisions are being made, the conversations are happening, having a voice in the discussion as we're aligning, so that again, we're making sure that we have a very balanced approach. We have a lot of different voices in the decision-making process of actually how we're going to do this and why. And it's really important not only at my next level, but the leadership, but the leadership levels even below that, because they're really the ones that have to implement and take this organizational change, to the sellers, right? So, really having a lot of discussion and a lot of involvement and empowerment, right, of those teams is important in the change. And also to realize that, we might not get it 100% right. Most likely we are not. So, we will make a decision, we will move forward with a decision. And for some reason, if it's not the right decision, it's okay to change course and make a change, right? We can't be afraid to evolve. And if we make a mistake, think we can't fix it, we can always fix it, right? We can always reverse if we have to. So I think just having some of those fundamentals, I think, so an example of that is, we were one of the teams we were going to integrate. It was right after the pandemic hit, and there was a lot of disruption to the business. We were working through a lot of things, and we were on this road to integration. I mean, we had it all mapped out. We were going to put teams together, and we decided that, one of the leaders said to me, I just don't know if this is a good idea to do this right now. It's rather distracting. We've got enough on our plate. And I thought about it for a couple of days, and I went back to him and I said, "Yeah, you're right. We shouldn't do this right now. Let's move it off to the end of the year. We'll reevaluate it. But this isn't probably the time to implement this change." So, I think there needs to be some agility, right, in this process. And I think when people see that, it's and know that they have a voice, that if something's not right, we'll fix it. They have an opportunity to relax a little bit about the fact that this change is coming. I also think, though, one of the really important things is, even though we are under one Vericast, and I do have different business units or sales teams that roll up into that, you do need to keep some of the culture and identity of those teams, because they all work a little bit differently. They have different nuances about the way they go to market. And I always say we want to take the best of the best and mash it all together and put it across the organization. But you also want to make sure that you maintain some of the uniqueness that makes those teams really experts and good at what they do, and not mess that up as well. And so there's got to be a balance of pulling it all together, as well as keeping some of that sense of their own culture and their own missions.
Yeah, no, I love what you're talking about here, and I mean, definitely, you're on the right on the right show to talk about agility. So, definitely agree that it's a culture of experimentation. That I love that you mentioned that you're not always going to get it right, all of the time, but you're not going to get it so wrong that you can't fix it and improve and iterate and stuff like that. And even if you feel like it's going well, you might not be doing as well as you could be. And so there's reasons to experiment, whether things are going good or bad, so to speak. What role does data play in this? So I mean, definitely, you talked about not wanting to undo good cultures that are parts of teams, and and yet aligning teams a little bit more together. How do you factor in the data part of that as well, where a team may be working well from a people and process perspective, but as they would say, the numbers don't lie. So how do you work that numbers discussion in and still kind of maintain those great things that you already mentioned?
Yeah, well, so I think, obviously, we're in sales, so it's always about measuring everything,
Yeah.
right? For sure, we measure everything, but I think where, if I understand your question right, like where the data kind of meshes together is, when we look at some of that, the business analytics and the business intelligence that we have, where are there opportunities as one Vericast, as one organization, for us to leverage the different business units and really give people some opportunity when we do that, right? So, for example, we have like a lot of retailers that are part of our customer base, and how can we use some of our retailers sit in our financial team, and some of the retailers sit in our retail team. And so we brought together what we call business teams, customer business teams, where there's like 7 or 8 customers that the different parts of our businesses touch. And they sit still within their own organizations, but we use the data from the different sales teams to kind of just see how can we continually push and get the customer to, adopt more of our solutions and more of our data. So there's ways to use it in a siloed way, but also bring it together, into kind of a one unified organization, because there are still sales teams that call, on clients in different areas. So one might call from a financial institution area, one might call from a marketing area, one might call, from a procurement area, right? So there's ways to leverage that, across one Vericast within the different sales silos as well.
You've mentioned several different metrics of success, but I'm wondering if there are beyond revenue and specific sales targets. How do you measure or come to understand that a team is aligned or that multiple teams are aligned? Like what kind of measures of success do you have to just make sure that things are moving in that right direction?
Yeah, we have different dashboards, so that we look at from, a sales enablement perspective, right? And the reason why I say they're different is because the teams still are, within their or organizations. I don't think that they all are doing the same things and need to be measured the same way. So there's different characteristics of, sales success that we're measuring by team, that we look at. And those, those include your basic sales metrics, right? But some of them are different. Like, so if we have a new business team, they're going to be measured a little differently than maybe a seller that's got a base business, and we're looking at, retention and growth within current businesses versus, new logo activity and things like that. But from an overall company perspective, and this is where I was talking about, making sure that you have cross-functional, what I call cross-functional alignment. We've got a plan this year, and the plan is very specific in certain things that we're trying to do, from, launching new products, increasing our technology, retaining our current customer base, growing that base, new logos. And we have a KPI scorecard that we keep that really, holds everybody accountable, not just the sales organization, but are the other teams, doing what they need to do to make sure that this plan that we have, this go-to-market plan, is executing on time, is hitting the milestones we need to hit in order to ultimately, hit the profit and the revenue goals.
One last question before we wrap up here. As you've inferred a few times, there's been a lot of change in a lot of industries over the last many months here. For other sales leaders that may be in similar or similar enough roles, what's a piece of advice that you would have for them as they navigate the months ahead? Like what are some areas they should be focusing on now, if and may not be?
Well, I would definitely say, start if you're starting to think about, an evolution or a transformation of your team or the company, definitely start with data, business, and industry intelligence, right? If you start with that base data, that gives you the foundation. Obviously, you can interpret it different ways, but I think it's a great foundation to start. That creates kind of the story that allows you to align the strategy. But I also think, more importantly, like, you need to make sure that you start to create a conversation and a culture that, transformation and change is the constant evolution of the business. I mean, how do you stay relevant if you're not constantly trying to engage the business wherever it is at that time? And you need to be proactive about it. I think it's really hard when you wish you would have done something, shoulda, woulda, coulda, right? And trying to be proactive and saying, taking that pause, looking at how the business is doing. Are your assumptions working? Are they not? And leaning into the change before you're kind of forced to it because the bottom's falling out, or there's tons of pressure building up, because you can make better decisions when that's not going on. And then ask for feedback, as I talked about before, from your team, from clients, from cross-functional leaders, as you're starting to develop your thoughts, and you don't have to have the plan baked, right? As you start to think about things, I always say, you got to roll things around in your head, bounce those ideas off of people and get some feedback before you kind of start putting some of your ideas down and start to want to execute them.
Wonderful. Well, Susan, thanks so much for joining the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. For those listening, what's the best way for them to keep up with what you're doing?
You can find me on LinkedIn, that's for sure.
Well, again, I'd like to thank Susan Rothwell, CRO at Vericast, for joining the show. Thanks for listening to The Agile Brand with Greg Kihlstrom. Talk with you next week. Thanks again for listening to the Agile Brand with Greg Kihlstrom podcast, brought to you by Tech Systems. If you enjoyed the show, please take a minute to subscribe on your podcast channel of choice and leave us a rating so that others can find the show more easily. You can access more episodes of the show at www.theagilebrand.show. To get a copy of my latest book, Meaningful Measurement of the Customer Experience, visit my website at gregkihlstrom.com. Until next week, stay agile.